Buongiorno e benvenuti a questo ulteriore Retail Talk che Federpreziosi organizza oggi insieme a due partner.
So, good morning. We are here with the Istituto Gemmologico Italiano and Assocoral. And today we will speak about something fantastic. That is Cameo. Well, think that during the opening ceremony at Piazza dei Signori Vicenza, well, the main speakers actually admired this Cameo working sector. And today we're here to discuss about that. We're here to people that are my personal friends, Vincenzo Aucella, President of Assocoral, and Vice President of Associazione Preziosi, and Loredana. Well, before giving the floor to Loredana, who will tell us about the Cameo, I would like to tell you this. Well, some years ago, when we first met with Vincenzo, we went to a meeting of Confcommercio. We spoke about that, and they asked me to present an excellence of our territory. And I decided to invite Vincenzo Aucella, who actually drew the attention of all the delegates at that meeting. We had the general director, who was very curious about this type of object. And he asked, what is a Cameo? Because for non-experts, it's something that is not very well known. It's something which is linked to the past. And then he thought that it was something like a scarab, but then we actually talked about the origin of this stone, which is an excellence in our territories. And our friend Vincenzo will talk about that. So, Vincenzo, I would like to invite you to open and to say hello to our audience. Well, good morning. I would like to thank my friends Loredana and Stephen. It's a format that we have been using for some years here in Vicenza, first with Coral, and now we're here to speak about cameos. Of course, we will just convey and share some basic information because we don't have so much time available. We just want to share with you some ideas and answer to possible questions. So at any time, please interrupt us and we will be happy to answer your questions. Very often the information that we give during the conference is then shared with other people. Well, of course, we have also possible consumers, possible clients. Well, I see that you're wearing a very beautiful cameo, just to testify your passion for this stone. Yes, I decided to wear a cameo. Well, when I accepted the invitation of Vincenzo,
I enthusiastically reacted, and then I thought, oh my God, as a gemologist, what can I tell about the Cameo? Because nobody's ever going to present us the analysis laboratory with a Cameo because it is well known what it is made of. That's a difference compared to the other gemstones where you have to identify the material. So I decided to start from the usual question everybody asks. What is a Cameo? So I did not ask ChatGPT because I'm quite vintage. And I just looked up in the encyclopedia the description of the Cameo. And this name, Cameo, was used for the first time in the Italian language in the 13th century. Pretty late. Generally, It referred to a gemstone that had been engraved with a high relief on a material made of 2 layers. So agate, sardonyx, which is both brown and white, onyx, which is white and black. And later on, we will see that also shells became used for cameos. So that's a description of the cameo, but the cameo belongs to the art of engraving gemstones, which anticipates the faceting and cutting of gemstones. So we're really talking about ancient times. So who were the first ones to use this technique, the glyptics, in the past? Assyrians, Babylonians, who used to engrave also soft materials such as ivory and wood. And they made their seals. These are engravings on a cylinder, which is usually provided with a hole. And this was used also to seal some clay vessels or other materials. So this was a very ancient art. Egyptians also engraved pretty soft gemstones such as serpentine and steatite. So I like to name all these materials because they can still be used in jewelry. And as you can see, part of the gemstone was engraved to give the shape of a scarab. On the other side, we had some more engravings, bringing good luck or expressing a prayer. I mean, you see a scarab and you immediately think of the past. That's right. But, I mean, this year, the beginning of the year, a well-known Italian-French company, Pomelato, presented the scarab collection. So this ancient idea was revamped, making use of more modern materials such as pink quartz, diasper, chalcedony, malachite, azurite, presenting the scarab collection. So this is to tell you that it is important to look at the past because you can find ideas to present something new. Yeah, it is the history coming back again. Exactly. History repeating itself. We always have to look at the past. The past must inspire us. We're going towards the future, but the past is our heritage, and we should never forget about it. So, back to the Egyptians, who managed to create art tools to engrave much harder materials. Agates, for instance, that have a hardness of 7 compared to serpentine, 4. The Egyptians were very talented, but also the Mycenaeans, that is, people living in the areas of Crete and Cyprus. Mycenaeans were very good also at engraving gemstones and producing high reliefs that can be referred to as cameos. They used chalcedony, cornelian, malachite. The Romans were the first ones to use onyx as a material. Onyx is an agate with white and black bands, and they produce fabulous masterpieces in onyx, because onyx is very suitable for this kind of work of art, because depending on the thickness of the white part, which is engraved, you might get the impression that there is some light blue below. So sometimes you have the impression that there is a light blue band, which is not there. It is just the effect of light diffusion. Here you can see some wonderful masterpieces, including the item which is the most important, the well-known Farnese's cup. You can visit it in the Archaeological Museum of Naples. Apparently, it dates back to the Egyptian period. People say it belonged to Cleopatra, and it is made in sardonyx, the white and brown agate. But look at the fineness of the details. You have a front part and a back part. In the back part, there are so many symbols which are so important for historians and archaeologists. These engravings were actually a narrative. They told about historical events. There were no books at that time. There was no Instagram. So to share history, they actually used engraving. And this item provides us with very interesting details of the Roman history. We also have a Gorgonian, and the Farnese's item also became a property of the Medici family, and the hole that can be seen was probably drilled when they decided to expose it. This cup had actually been thrown to the floor by a creditor of the Medici family who had not been paid, and in a rage he threw it on the floor, and then it has been put together again. If you allow the light to filter from the back, you can appreciate these amazing details and the way how the craftsmen managed to give a 3D effect to the scene depicted. So the Romans also learned to engrave materials, also very precious ones, such as amethyst. The Romans, of course, were self-referential. So, of course, Emperor Caracalla wanted his face to be reproduced in amethyst because this was a way to prove their power. Here we also have a chrome chalcedony that was called the Romans' emerald, given its green color, and which was used in the place of emeralds. This is a ruby. It is not easy to find engraved rubies. Rubies are incredibly hard. 9 is the hardness value. But Caracalla also decided that he wanted his face engraved in one of the hardest materials, the ruby. Hyaline quartz, amber, other materials were used. One of the best-known cameos is visible now in this slide. It is called the Augustus gemstone. And the purpose is that of celebrating a victory of Tiberius between the 6th and the 9th, between 6 and 9 after Christ against the Germans. So, to teach history to young people, I believe that this is a wonderful way, rather than looking it up on the internet. Right, the previous item can be found in the Vienna Museum. So it is very important to go and see museums because they're very rich in gemmological material. as well as material which is relevant also for our industry. This is another well-known Cameo. It is the largest Cameo. 31 centimeters time 26.5. Sardonyx is the gemstone, and sardonyx is the agate consisting of white and dark brown bands. So the nuances provide us with an exceptional three-dimensionality. Glyptics has always been a very important art throughout the Renaissance as well, envisaging the use of many different materials. This is another example from the Renaissance this time, when all the materials, all the items in general were produced in gemstones: lapis, diasper, hyaline, quartz, and so on and so forth. The Medici family loved this, and this was very fashionable, so much so that the ladies used to wear cameos. Napoleon and his wife also loved cameos, but also Napoleon's sister, who used to love Napolitan cameos. Following his sister's advice, Napoleon went to Torre del Greco and ordered a tiara for his wife. And this is a famous tiara because it was made by the craftsmen of Torre del Greco. And that gave a new impetus to carving of cameos. So sardonyx and onyx. Other examples in sardonyx and onyx. Onyx again. And this brings us to the material which is predominantly used today in Torre del Greco: shells. Why shells? Well, because shells are a beautiful material, able to provide us with a 3D effect, since it can have different layers of color. And in this slide, I want to show you that this item that was made 15, 18 years ago, I know the people working in the company who made this masterpiece, gemmologists, who have created a different way to produce cameos. This ring was named Eve, with the tempting snake. Here we can see the different types of shells that are used. Alligator gigas. Well, we all used to call this Strombus gigas. It is a typical pink shell, Strombus gigas. But in biology, thanks to DNA studies, the name of species are changed. So Strombus gigas was later on named Lobatus gigas, and now this is named Alligator gigas. So it is necessary to keep updated, because maybe when you have to pay your custom duties, you have to name exactly the type of material used. So this was used in the past, but since Strombus gigas or Alligator gigas is one of the materials in the list of those materials that cannot be traded any longer because it is threatened by extinction, it is no longer possible to use Alligator gigas, and this is why Cassis madagascariensis and Cassis rufa are used today.
So this is Strombus gigas. Why is it being extinct? Because it's meat is very good. It was fished not only in the Caribbean area, which is its original natural habitat, but also along the coasts of Florida. And wealthy Americans living in Florida used to eat a lot of this product. And what happened? Well, in this shell, you also found the famous pink pearls. And then when they discovered that it was possible to find pearls, not only so they would try and fish it, not only for the food, but also for the pearls. Now it is a protected species, and it is grown in specific places, and also in these places you can find these shells which contain pearls. Here we have examples of cameos with strombus or Aliger giga, and you see that they are whiter because the original color is pink. This is the front and this is the back, and here we have the two shells which are currently used. Cassis rufa, which was the one which was mainly used in the past, and it was known as carnelian shell. It is reddish in color. You see the size. Well, these are, I'm not going to read the sizes, but you see that they are also beautiful to see. They are very much decorative because there are some people who use these shells as an ornamental object in their houses, in their homes. Well, this shell is pretty widespread. It's grown in the Pacific area along the coasts of Madagascar and Mozambique. Well, what is beautiful about Ascansis cariensis, which is the one which is mainly used currently and which recalls agate, well, it is called sardonyx shell. Well, we must be very careful because when someone tells you it is a sardonyx, well, it is not necessarily the agate, but it is perhaps a sardonyx shell. So we must be very careful in terms of terminology. You see the colors. It's a gasteropod, it's curved, it can have some bulges, and what is funny is that despite the name, it doesn't come from Madagascar because, well, it's interesting here because the first person who gave the name to this shell and who thought that they had found it in Madagascar gave that name, Madagascarensis, and so the name has been kept. Here you see some pictures of cameos taken from this shell. Various images are used, women's faces, particular scenes which go back to the past, which recall the past. Well, recently, when we had the day dedicated to cameos, well, you had presented images of cameos showing reproduction of dogs. Well, and this is what sometimes clients ask for. So they have dogs, and they ask to have a sort of a picture made in this way. So it's nice. Anyway. Well, we see that in some countries, this is the daughter of King Gustav, where she's wearing the tiara, the same tiara which belonged to Napoleon's wife. You see that they always marry within a sort of a club, and so the Dutch emperor or king, and then Gustav, the wife, worn it, and now it is the daughter who is wearing the tiara on her marriage day. However, we also are noting that also in the world of fashion, cameos are being increasingly used. Here we have some pictures with cameos, some famous actresses wearing cameos. So you see that you can wear cameos. Some young people used to say, well, it's an ancient gemstone. Well, it depends also on the family relations, because these ancient, sort of ancient gems are now, or objects are now being increasingly used. Now, artisans, craftsmen, well, you spoke about AI, and Vincenzo will tell us about the possible importance of AI. Well, what really surprises us is the ability to work these shells. And apart from the beauty of designs of drawings, they are done freehand. So a small mistake is enough, and then you throw away a work which took weeks, for example. Well, together with Vincenzo and the artisans of Assocoral, we saw that everybody remains surprised about this type of work and the beauty of cameos. Well, I know that you, as an association, are making huge efforts to protect this cameo. Yesterday, I participated in a meeting where there was a presentation by Minister Lollobrigida, who really highlighted the excellence on the treatment, on the processing of cameos, on the engraving of cameos. Well, can you tell us about the efforts that you are making in order to enhance the beautiful territory where you live, that is Campania and Torre del Greco?
Well, I've seen Loredana's slides today for the first time, and I have to say that maybe we have organized many meetings on coral together, but this was the first time for Cameo. And when we talked about it, she was a little bit hesitating, but I would like to congratulate her for the wonderful job that she has done. Listening to a third party talking about cameos is really impressive. I have to say that Torre del Greco is the ultimate place where the art of coral and coral working and cameos has come. It is the world capital of coral items and cameos, but everything starts from the past. And as Loredana told us, cameos are made predominantly out of 3 different shells. The pink shell, which has now become part of the Appendix 1. In the past, it was Appendix 3, and you could process it. Now being Appendix 1, you cannot trade it anymore. Conversely, Cassis Ruf and Cassis Marascarensis can still be traded. So they have this double layer that allows for wonderful cameos, just like agates. The double layer is used to extract the image. It is a circular economy because shells were used as the ballast of ships. Ships leaving the harbor of Naples went around the Mediterranean Sea. They brought material to Africa. And of course, they could not come back empty. They needed a ballast, so they found those shells on the beach. They put them in the boats as a ballast, free of cost. Arriving in Naples port, they took them out of their ships, of course, and craftsmen decided to start using them. But the Napolitan area didn't have any engraving tradition. So during the Bourbon times, glyptics were going strong in Rome, and there were amazing families of craftsmen who were invited to Naples to teach our craftsmen. So the first shell we started on was Cassis rufa, the reddish one. This was used to engrave the typical feminine face. This was followed by Cassis madagascariensis coming from Central America, with its brown-white contrasting colors gives us the opportunity to play with the colors, because our craftsmen really work on a thickness of a few millimeters. And what you can see here is a photograph provided by Ida Roberstein, our supplier of gemstone cameos. Loredana showed you some agate cameos. Unfortunately, I do not have a picture of the different processing stages. But this is very interesting, because when at an exhibition like this one, you see a supplier of cameos who has trays full of cameos, then you may wonder, how can all this be made by hand? As a matter of fact, cameos are all made by hand. And companies, even though demand is bespoke, but nevertheless, during the 80s or 90s, American customers asked for thousands of cameos, and then, of course, the company had to produce in advance and always have a stock so that it was possible to meet the customer's demand. So when we needed thousands of items, we used to organize our workshop with 4 or 5 craftsmen who actually did, say, only the flowers. Another one was specialized in the birds, another one in the nose, the other one in the mouth. So it was like a conveyor belt, so to say. We never used machines, but we became skilled into making certain details so that we could speed up the process. So, as I told you before, this is agate from Brazil, and this is the rough piece. Agate cameos we see coming from Ida Roberstein, produced by machine. They actually straighten the gemstone, the agate, they dye it, and then they engrave it. These are the 3 different steps. So from this element, it is possible to obtain this step by step. So the agate is a flat surface. It is painted, dyed, generally in blue. This is black, actually, but we have blue, black, red, and green. The coloring simulates the natural colors of the shell. So 2 layers are painted. And then with specific machines, they manage to engrave it. So they start from what you can see on the left. The central part is intermediate, and then you have the final product. These machines impress through micro movements the drawing. It's a master drawing, a negative drawing made on copper plates. And there are several steps with several master elements to produce the cameo. So you need several machines. Many claim pantographs and laser is used to produce Cameo, agate cameos, but that's not the case. Here we have a machine, and what is produced is a serial production. They all look alike. Before COVID, from 2015 to 2020, we have seen many of these cameos on the international markets, like in Hong Kong. The Asian market prefers agate cameos, which are all identical. They used to say, no, yours are not identical, each one is different, and they tend to think in terms of thousands of items, so they want them to be all identical. So sometimes they're even more expensive than ours because of the high cost of the raw material, because of the dyeing agents, which are noxious. So it is not easy to find people who can produce them. So paradoxically, a handmade cameo is scoffed, preferring a machine-made cameo. I mean, we sell these as well, you know, this is a supplier of ours. Most companies sell both types of cameos. It is just important to say that this is machine-made, and it is not made by us. And considering what has happened in the past 2 years, this has become now the only supplier who has the know-how. It has know-how as the machinery. Because also in this case, just like in Torre del Greco, there is no company producing machinery to engrave cameos. These are all adaptations, and also those who used to produce these machines that were used in other types of industries have stopped producing. So it is even difficult to maintain this machinery. So this large company has bought all the machinery on the market from the small suppliers of the past, and they have a monopoly. This is just to make you understand, you know, when they ask me, you use a pantograph to do your cameos? Impossible, you can't use a pantograph. So that is their basis. This is our basis. It is the shell, which is totally curved. It is impossible, almost impossible to use machines to engrave the shell. Our category has tried to do that. It was an experiment. The engraver can do this faster than a water CNC machine because the calibration, the setting of the machine has to be adapted to each shell, which has its own shape, its own protuberance. So the technologist has to set the machine and engrave. But in the meantime, the craftsman has already finished his or her cameo. So it is not interesting economically, because you would have to set up the machine for each single cameo. Right, so these are all the different steps. The sardonyx and cornelian shell undergoes the very same steps. So you start from the raw material. Considering the shape of the shell, you can understand the color and the quality. It's like for any other gemstone. You have darker, lighter colors, and all this determines the value as well. We import large bags of shells. When we import them, it is just a bag. This is waste material for our suppliers. It is like when you eat mussels or oysters and you throw out the shell. But we buy what other people would throw out and we transform it into a masterpiece. It is the first step of a sustainable value chain. Exactly. So based on the outer shape, we understand about the quality and the color. But of course, you have to cut it, to engrave it, to know exactly what you are doing. So in the first phase, the roughing out phase, we discover the basic color. The darker the basic color, the higher the contrast. In the roughing out phase, expert hands work with extremely sharp blades that are kept in the water because they have to be cooled. Both the blade and the shell have to be cooled, otherwise the shell, being organic, could be damaged by the heating. So then you start with the next step, which is the marking. So depending on what you want to achieve, you define with a felt tip pen the shape. This is a marking. Then you cut it again, and then you move on to the shaping phase, the cut. Maybe has to be transformed into a heart shape or an oval shape. As you can see, hands are paramount. They're present in each single one of these slides. It is impossible to replace the man, the artist, who's able to interpret the raw material. These photographs come from a photographic exhibition of a photographer, Direttore del Greco, who has valorized the human aspect of the process. So during the shaping phase, a water grinder is used, and you can see that the wheel turns into the water which is necessary to cool the item. This is necessary both for the sardonyx and for the cornelian shell. Once a semi-finished product has been accomplished, the engraver has to use a support to be able to engrave the shell.
As I said earlier, also over the years, we have adapted to the situation, and the mix of pitch is the same that you use in the area of gold. So it's the same material which is being used. We put this support on fire, and the fire melts the object, and then we start with the artistic side. So far it's merely something which belongs to craftsmen. These are mainly carvers who take care of this step of the process. And in the labs, there can be those who prepare the shells and those who complete the cleaning of the shells. You see that the artisan looks at the piece and has to imagine the design, because the shell, as you have seen, is curved, but it also has some bulges. And that bulge is fundamental because it can be a limitation, but in fact it can be an added value, because if we, for example, engrave not so much an eye, but a flower or a small bird, if we engrave that on the bulge, well, that is something which adds value. So the study of the design is fundamental. Well, the drawing is not perfectly implemented, and that's why AI can be very useful. So we do not implement the drawing perfectly. We just create space, and then it's up to the artisan to engrave those single details. So you use the burin, and the burin is the same as the one used by carvers, and the only difference is that we cut it, and it's the same which is used also by those who work with metal. And the only difference is, well, you see that piece of cloth which is being used. Well, it's used by the engraver to leverage on that piece of cloth. In hall 4, along the columns, you will find a stand where the artisan can make in vivo demonstrations. So if you are curious, if you want to look at this process, you can go there. On Saturday, we had a specific event, and the visitors could actually try and engrave a cameo. It was very funny and something very useful. It's something that we often do in collaboration with the Federpreziosi. Well, that is to say that every piece is a unique piece. Here you see a Madonna. Well, what can we see? We see that there are two similar cameos, the same drawing, the same design, but the details are different. The shade and the flower on one side, which is more apparent because there was an extra material there. So when we are asked to make several pieces, we are the ones who tell our clients that it is impossible to have the same, perfectly the same picture. For example, a client who says, I have a picture of my son and I want to have a cameo, but we explain the client that the cameo is made by hand. It's not a perfect transposition from the picture to the cameo. And we try and explain our clients and customers that it is impossible to have 100% similar transfer of the image. So on the left, you see the draft drawing, which gives an idea about the space. And then the artisan will directly engrave the piece. Well, I'd like to close with a very high-level cameo by an engraver who carried out these demonstrations here in Vicenza together with us. And this is to tell you that the world of cameos is something that includes very different opportunities from the face of the woman that I showed you at the beginning. We can get to this type of design, of engraving. Well, the situation, of course, is different from the past because we have an art institute in Torre del Greco where it is possible to learn this technique with masters that teach the students this type of work. And then if students want, they can go on to the Academy of Fine Arts. So Cameo now has evolved a lot as compared to the past. Thank you. Well, we saw the passion behind this story. So you had words coming out from your heart. Yeah. If you enlarge the image, you see these veils, and you have the idea that it is a veil. And this reminds me of the great artists of the past, Michelangelo, for example. Well, think that these are artisans, but not only artisans, they are really artists, great artists. Well, jewelers themselves can tell a story when they propose their jewels to the public. Well, you can recall those bright eyes and tell the story to your clients, to your customers. Yesterday we spoke about AI, and we said that it is important to use AI to tell a story. And today we heard about this beautiful history. And we heard about the efforts made by the association to speak about and to spread the news about this important sector. And in a few minutes, we will have another event where we will have another storytelling session with an excellent speaker. So if there are no questions, I would like to thank Loredana and Vincenzo heartfully, and perhaps we will meet next year at the next edition of Vicenza Oro. Last year we spoke about the coral, today the Cameo, and at the next edition we will see. Thank you.